And I think the highlight of it all, if anything, to describe how dire the situation is for small traders in Kenya, who are the majority, of course, is President Kenyatta's almost unconventional remarks, chicken tongue, telling cabinet secretaries that they can ingeniously say fish from China has gone bad to provide market for Kenyan fishermen. Just shows how desperate or dire the situation is. And Zetsewere, development economist, now joins us to unpack this very quickly. Thank you for joining us first. You were part of this team that tried to really push this to get a round table with President Kenyatta for how long? Over 5 years. Well,
I think many of us who've been looking at the micro, small and medium enterprise space have understood the importance for a very long time. But I think mainstream in general, whether it's government, whether it's bankers, whether it's whoever it is, policymakers, they've generally neglected the sector. So it's welcome that the prominence of that sector is now being welcomed.
But do you think it's enough? I mean,
Absolutely.
It's not the first time the president is hearing cost of power. It's not the first time they're hearing about cheap imports, flooding the markets. It's not the first time they're hearing about access to credit or finance, access to markets. It's not the first time. And all these promises have been made. What makes you think it's going to be different this time?
I think it was a completely different constituent. I mean, if you think of the doors that have opened from government, it's been very big players. And don't get me wrong, very big players have similar problems in terms of access to finance, but it's at a very different scale and a very different set of issues that they're trying to address, which still need to be addressed, don't get me wrong. But what I've been pushing for a long time, and many of us in this sector, is that there are micro, small and medium enterprises that really need small nudges, small support systems, very coherent structures that they themselves have been asking for government. How are we going to get from small businesses to multinationals? This is a conversation that we're trying to have, is that we need to start graduating people from micro to medium to large scale. And that has been the basic transition that we don't have, is that you're either locked in the micro and small, medium space, or you eventually find your way to become a large player through your own ingenuity. So we don't have a transition process, and so a lot of our labor is stuck in very low productivity labor spaces.
But they should be given a bigger ear, because, I mean, you're saying it's important, of course, to look into the big players, but it seems big players have been being given the ear all through by government. When President Uhuru talks like this, and they talk about 2 months to come up with solutions, or to actually effect changes. For example, 1 month to review cost of power downwards. How realistic is this? Do you think this is going to be achieved?
I think we're very realistic. I think those of us who've been working in the sector are very realistic. There's the role of government, there's the role of the sector itself, and there's the role of other players. Government is a crucial component because what the president has done is that he's signaled to the domestic space, domestic private sector, domestic development institutions, domestic non-governmental bodies. He's also signaled to international players, whether you're international financiers, whether you're international non-state players, that this is a priority the government has. I think that is something that micro, small and medium enterprises have yet to see. And this was the inaugural. So I think that's important. But that aside, I think there is work, more broadly speaking, that needs to be done beyond state structures that micro, small and medium enterprises need to deal with. One, access to finance is what everybody sings about, but when you actually talk to micro, small and medium enterprises, access to finance is one component. Is that, okay, we need these loans to do this. But there's a whole ecosystem of support that they require, which is far more expensive, right? And one of the reasons we've seen this lack of support in the development of private sector in terms of micro, small and medium enterprises because of the ecosystem that is required. Now, let me tell you something. If you look at some of the most profitable companies such as Amazon, they had year on year stages where they were told, don't make a profit, just build your model, you'll make your money later. And this is one of the things I think is important in this forum, is to signal that this is an important sector. Let us give in-patient capital and an ecosystem of support so that we can start graduating people out of poverty. Until when are we going to sing these songs?
But finance, I mean, finance definitely is an issue here.
Yeah.
And if we are going to change anything, do you think the government has budgeted for anything? Actually, both national and county governments, have they prioritized anything on SMEs, especially county governments?
Well, let me put it this way.
They need to do,
I mean, I've talked about fiscal policy for a very long time, okay? And I think government is in a very tight fiscal space. So they're very going to be very measured in the sort of financing they deploy. And that's why it's very important that whatever financing they do commit to the sector is very intelligently deployed and very intelligently allocated. That said, what is more important beyond what government gives is the complementarity. How can we start getting state and non-state actors to work on the same projects to build an ecosystem that changes the economic structure of our economy? If you look at MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprise, they employ over 80% of Kenyans. New employment is about 83%. When people say they have a job, they're talking about SMEs. Yeah. That's where they're talking about. But when you look at productivity issues, their contribution to GDP, it could be so much more. So I think we cannot just sit here and say, only government can do it. We need to become very creative. And I think many of us have ideas on how to do it in terms of getting that joint commitment to change the economic structure of our country.
How do you think we're going to see changes this time around?
Well, I think it's up to individuals and institutions to actually get the willpower to get it done.
Okay. We have willpower from President Kenyatta. Thank you. And that's a very development economist for making time for us. Tonight, we have seen the willpower from President Kenyatta and what he has said. And what do you think of him owning up and apologizing and the promise to change it, how they're dealing with the SMEs in the countries? Talk to us, 22422. You can text us on Twitter, use the hashtag NEWSNIGHT.